Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today's story takes us up to Butler County, Pennsylvania. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Erica.
Let's get into it. This season, we're being sponsored by our friends at Haunted US. They travel the country bringing you real stories of American hauntings every Thursday at hauntedus.com. So, Butler, Pennsylvania. A land of not many things.
Right.
Which, David's making a face. I was going to say, I'm sure I'm offending someone. I think of Butler as a really small area, but it's actually a county. Like, I think of Butler proper, which is, I'll give it to you, David. Butler proper is cool, and we have gone on ghost tours there.
So I actually went there, I think, to get the vaccine, one of the vaccines at the CVS, and I remember thinking, like, nobody ever talks about Butler, but it does have, like, a nice main street.
It really does. There's tons of cool buildings. The ghost tour was cool. They have events. I shouldn't have said it's not of many things.
Where the Jeep was created.
It is where the Jeep was created, actually.
Oh my God.
Yeah, they have, if you go to like the town center, they have a Jeep there because they produced it for the army, the armed forces.
That's really cool.
And it was in Butler. So cool. So I stand corrected. A land of many things, Butler, Pennsylvania.
Like 50 minutes outside of the city.
Yeah, I know. Just far to get there. And this is in Butler County, but it was like far in Butler County. Like, my mom lives north, and it was 30 minutes further from her house. Yeah.
Oh my God. That's far.
Yeah. But it was nice because I broke it up, and like she and my stepdad went with me to go look at this. So today we're talking about specifically the Butler Black Cross. And this is a really sad story, as a lot of these sites are, but sad in a different way than like a battlefield where, yes, there's a huge loss of lives, because this is the Spanish flu and deaths from the Spanish flu. Oh. So, in 1918, the Spanish flu swept through Western PA, killing many, and not just Western PA, everywhere.
Right.
And specifically in Butler County, there was a high population of immigrants because a lot of people were farmers, and they were from Europe. Many of the workers died, but they didn't have family there. They were sending money back or trying to get their families to come over, and they were so new that they typically weren't associated with any church, but they were Catholic in faith, as many Europeans were at this time.
Yeah.
So due to this, there was no means to properly bury them because there was no family to pay for it and no church to sponsor it. So what they did is they put all of the bodies in a cart and were going to a mass grave. And the story goes that while this person was pushing the bodies, the cart broke down, and it was on a farmer's land. And they said, "Can we just bury the bodies here?" And the farmer said, "Sure." His name was McLaughlin, and he gave the whole field to serve as the location of the mass grave.
What farmer would agree to that?
So, I guess it's also like, what are you gonna do? Like,
I guess that's fair.
Because, it's 1918. It's not like there's a ton of laws and stuff on this. So, technically, they could just leave the bodies there.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that would be kind of a mean move by the farmer to be like, no, your cart's broken, but carry all of the bodies to where the mass grave was supposed to be.
Right. And I think it was like the community was already doing some stuff out of goodwill.
Right.
Because these people couldn't afford it. So they dug a mass grave there, and they were put right there where the cart broke down. Now, they were Catholic, and if you are Catholic, you know that last rites is a very important thing in Catholicism to get into heaven, etc. I don't know if it's to get into heaven.
Is that the penance thing that you do at the end of your life?
I think so. I just know, like, in hospitals, when someone's dying and they're Catholic, a priest will come and give last rites.
Yes.
Yeah, you know?
Yes. It's like, so I think part of that is like the last confession of your sins.
Oh, I mean, that makes sense. Because it's supposed to help you get into heaven, I think.
Yeah, and like in penance, it's said that like your soul kind of returns to a blank slate after you do penance.
Yeah.
It's been a while for me.
I know. I'm like, I was raised Catholic. I should know more. Oops. Or I should have asked my mom, who went to Catholic school. So the priest at St. John's Church, which was local and in the community, Father O'Callaghan, was so upset that the victims were not given a proper funeral and went there and performed Catholic burial rites over the mass grave. And he and his church raised funds for a grave marker, which is a cross made out of railroad ties. And that was put up there because he felt like even though these people weren't necessarily members of his church and they didn't have family, they are God's children. And so he wanted to do something nice. And therefore it became known as the Black Cross because railroad ties are black. It was there until 2002 when it was replaced with a plaque and a more formal memorial for the dead. And there was a ceremony and an unveiling of the new site, and it's currently registered as a Butler County historical site.
That makes sense.
That being said, it is so hard to find. If
Is
you
it?
put Butler Black Cross into Google Maps, you cannot find it. I had to go to another site that had a historical or paranormal record of it, find the coordinates, and enter the coordinates to go to. So someone should get on that because this should be better marked, especially since it's a Butler County historical site. And it is just kind of on the side of a road, but there's like a clearing in the woods. There's one of those blue and gold plaques that they do for historical sites, I guess.
Yeah.
Marking it, and then you go into the clearing and there's a small white cross on a base, and people have left like rosaries and stuff there.
Oh.
So it was really beautiful, and I think it needs more notoriety because it's also a huge piece of history.
Yes, I was going to say the plaque should be the address. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, if they're going to put a plaque down, then they should also have a formal address for it.
Right. And it's like, it wasn't that big. It's like the whole clearing from the plaque was like the length of the first floor of my house. So you could put one address and it would comprise everything. It's not like a battlefield where you have tons of space.
Right. That's also very nice of the priest.
I know.
To do that.
I know. I thought it was a really cool story. And that the community continued to do it, like even in 2002, replacing it with a plaque. So it's important to the people that live there locally. I think it just needs more overall recognition.
Yeah.
So hopefully this helps with that. So now the paranormal story. There are tons of auditory hauntings known to happen at the site. First, I'm going to talk about like the other people's accounts of it, and then I'll go into my account.
Okay.
So lots of auditory hauntings at the site, which I was super excited for. Most commonly reported is disembodied voices that sound like they're actually coming from underground. I know.
Ooh.
Very creepy.
Yeah, that is.
And they are apparently in a few different languages, which I think would make sense if there was just a mesh of immigrants there. And visitors report moving around trying to locate the sound. Is it coming from like the trees or whatever? And then eventually they put their like ear to the ground, and that's when they can hear it better, which is crazy to me. I feel like it's the first time we've had something be that literally coming from where the body would be buried.
Yes. And I can't even imagine if someone, because obviously now we like know this, so we would get there and kind of automatically know where to put our heads. But I can't imagine somebody not knowing this going into it and just kind of looking around, and then eventually, because I would think somebody was like buried under there.
Right?
Like I would be like, all right, time to get a shovel because someone has been wrongfully buried.
Yes.
In this site.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to me that that's where people hear it. And the main languages that people say they hear is Slovak and Polish.
Oh.
And while there were definitely a lot of Polish immigrants in Pennsylvania at that time, I also wonder if it's just those are the languages people recognize,
Oh, yes.
Because, what is it, Gaelic is the Irish dialect? People aren't good. I don't think people would be able to pick that out, for example.
No.
So I think a lot of it is biased based on what people can hear. But regardless, people do hear a variety of different languages. Visitors also hear babies crying, and this isn't coming from underground like the adult talking, I guess. But
Right.
It seems to come from everywhere all at once. Almost like if you remember when we covered the Philadelphia Zoo, the waltz music that they said they couldn't track down, it was kind of coming from everywhere. It kind of was described that way, that people will be like, oh, it's from over here. No, it's from over here.
Gotcha. So there were children then.
There was some were families. But people don't think that it's actually children that died. They think it's the orphans of the parents that died.
Oh no.
I know.
That's very sad.
I know, it's very sad. And I didn't find anything on how many kids were orphaned or what happened to that. But I think it's a decent theory since it's coming from a different location.
That's what I was just about to say. I think that makes more sense since it's coming from everywhere, not underground.
Right.
Hi, listeners. We're so excited to tell you about our partnership with Haunted US. Haunted US is an online publication that brings you credible articles on the history and specific paranormal claims of haunted locations across the country. We've even used them to research some of our episodes. Visit hauntedus.com for new haunted places every Thursday.
So that's the auditory. Moving on to more physical hauntings. So Ghosts of America has some images of the site that have evidence of paranormal activity. I say evidence loosely because it does depend on interpretation, but I'll tell you how they interpret it. So one photo has mist, and some believe there's a woman standing behind the mist in the image. The photographer claims that it was not misty that day and that no one was smoking, it wasn't cold, so there was nothing to actually form that mist or fog that we see in the photo. And they say that the appearance of the photo is caused by the spirits with unfinished business that are put in the grave.
Oh.
And that it's not super distinct because there's just so many.
Yeah, like the person is in the photo. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, to be fair, even if it was misty that day, to have someone show up in a photo behind the mist is,
freaky.
Yeah.
And there's other common reports of mist here in photos. We've discussed before that mist can be associated with the paranormal, but strangely, there are also reports of strong wind on the site, specifically at this location, and some say that can contribute to mist. I'm not a meteorologist or a physicist, so I don't know how that would contribute.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Science.
know. Yeah. The most common paranormal thing that I read is that the trees feel like they're reaching out to grab you. Yes.
Oh, I don't like that.
I was a little nervous to go for that reason. Because I pictured have you read the book The Ruins?
No, actually.
So in the book, spoiler alert, in the book, there's these vines that try to grab the people and drag them and kill them. And it's a good book. Movie, but it reminded me of that. And I was like, am I going to be walking and a vine wraps around my leg, or a tree branch seemingly out of nowhere scratches me? So I was a little nervous. I did not tell my parents about this before we went.
Good idea.
But I didn't have that experience. But there are some theories that people have on why this does happen to some people that visit. Some say the dead are resentful for not receiving their rites and proper memorial initially, so they want to drag you down with them and make you stay there. Some people say the dead just want you to notice them. It's not trying to drag you, it's trying to just tap you.
Yeah.
Which could be. And some say that the trees are trying to redirect you from the area so you don't get sick with the Spanish flu.
I kind of like that third theory.
Yeah, it's definitely the nicest one.
Yeah, you're right. The other two are not. Well, spirits wanting to be remembered. We've seen that before.
Yeah.
So that, that's at least not too terrifying, even though a tree is tapping you. But the first one is really scary.
Yeah, but I do think probably the most likely.
I also think so.
I think, even though Father O'Callaghan went back and did give them rights, they had a lot of reason to be angry.
Yes.
They were there without their families. They were working typically very challenging manual labor jobs. So, and they died from the Spanish flu and were in this mass grave. I think they have a lot of reason to be upset.
Yeah, and to be fair, I had said earlier that it was nice of the farmer to let them bury them on the site because they would have had to carry everybody to the actual site. But each individual spirit is probably that would have been worth it for me.
It still would have been a mass grave, though.
I guess you're right.
Yeah. I think it would have been bad either way. And probably better to not further disturb the bodies, because we see that can cause issues.
True. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And I think, obviously, they would be justified in being angry, but I do love that there is goodwill surrounding this terrible event, like the farmer, Father O'Callaghan, etc.
Yeah.
And it's also fun. I love their names. They sound so, like, Irish. McLaughlin and Father O'Callaghan.
Yeah.
That's part of why I mentioned Gaelic earlier, because I think there's a lot of Irish people.
Yeah.
At night, there are actually different auditory hauntings, which is interesting to me. Supposedly, a howling can be heard that some describe as unearthly, and some say they're the howl of hellhounds, which are sometimes known as an omen of death or despair.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting, the difference between day and night, for sure. I don't know that we've seen that before.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because we always talk about the witching hour, you know, between 3 and 4 a.m. And so to have different auditory sounds, it's almost like the individuals underground are sleeping when we sleep. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. I did not consider that. And it's also interesting because I feel like reports of hellhounds is pretty rare. I mean, at this point, we're on season 4, so we've covered 75 different locations, and I think we've only had them in 2 other places. I think it was the farmhouse with the witch, or the old meeting house, the Providence Meeting House, and Blue Mist Road, and I think those were it.
Yes.
So it is not a common occurrence, and I always think it's interesting when something new or uncommon is reported.
Yeah.
So those were other people's experiences there. Now to talk about mine. So we actually got decent activity here, which was really exciting. We know that the ghosts are Catholic, and we always try to be as respectful as we can when we go into these sites. So we did recite some Catholic prayers. Like I said, I was raised Catholic, and both my stepdad and my mom went to Catholic school. So it's not a bizarre thing for us to do. And when we were walking, I was actively saying out loud that I was sorry that this happened to them, because I am sorry that it happened to them. And I think it's really important to set your intention when you go places and be respectful.
Yeah.
These were real people. I feel like I am a broken record saying it. Real people that were alive before you decided to be interested in why it's haunted. So, breaking down the evidence or activity that we got. So I took a REM pod and put it near the cross marker. And for those of you that don't know what a REM pod is, it's a machine with like a antenna, and if anything comes close to it, it will make a buzzing noise and light up. So I put it near the black, or the white cross now it is, and let it sit for a little. I wanted to make sure that the wind wasn't going to agitate it, you know, and make it go off, and it didn't. And while I was watching the REM pod, I had my mom hold the EMF reader so she could report spikes that came. And we did get some activity near the cross marker with the REM pod. Once I stepped back, it started going off and would go off seemingly in spurts. And we did get EMF activity up to 5. And my mom specifically noted that when I was speaking, the EMF reader was going off. As always, we want to debunk stuff. So afterwards, we did try, like, is something weird happening with the EMF reader that it's going off when someone's talking? And it was not. So we debunked that. And again, I think it's the things that I was saying, like, I'm so sorry that you're here, like, we're here to remember you, probably resonated with the spirits that are there.
Yeah. And also, possibly, if theory 1 is correct on the trees, maybe that's why you did not experience that.
That is something that I thought about. I do think that a lot of people, when they think of hauntings and paranormal places, they think of it's a general response to people, but so much of it is how you go into it.
Yes. I mean, listen, I know it's a game, but Phasmophobia, man. I mean, if you scream at the ghosts, they will come after you. And I think that in a less jokey way happens in real life. I mean, if you go into a place with disrespect, that's what you'll receive back.
Absolutely. My mom and I both had a feeling when we were there, like we were being watched, and almost like we were seeing something out of the corner of our eye, both to the same side. It was to the left. And we tried to use the EMF reader, move the REM pod over there, but it didn't really result in a spike of activity. And when I took videos or photos of the forest near, like, surrounding, I didn't capture anything. But my stepdad is very brave and actually decided to venture further into the woods to see if there was an animal nearby, or maybe even a neighborhood kid, because it was right by a neighborhood, or anything there. And he didn't find anything there.
Interesting.
So I always love when we can try to understand the spirits, and I was trying to discern, what nationality they were, using the REM pod of, hey, if you're Slovak, can you approach the REM pod? But they didn't seem to really want to communicate, just kind of make their presence known. But interesting nonetheless. And I'm pleased to see that the memorial is well cared for, and it has, like, fake flowers on it, and the not a crucifix. Rosaries, yes. And it feels like a place of sadness, which it should.
Yes, definitely. I think the rosaries are really nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I wonder how many, I don't know, were they kind of out? Or rosaries in boxes?
They were out. They were wrapped around the cross, actually.
See, and that's so cool. I wonder how many people sat and actually said a full rosary.
Right. I wonder. That's something we could go back and do.
Yeah.
And it could be a nice touch.
Yeah.
Because I do think, this is one of those places that is close enough with spirits that I think are welcoming to people. I think if anything, we're curious as to what we were doing and didn't get recognition. So it could be nice if we're ever up that way to just stop by and say some prayers there.
Yeah.
But I guess that answers the question of would I go back? I absolutely would. What about you?
Yes. I have not been, right, but I would go. I think it's interesting, like, as someone who isn't religious anymore, it's still, like, a nice thing to see something like this with all the support and, again, all of the rosaries that I love them. They're so beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think that would be nice. And, yeah, to go back and do an actual investigation again to, see if we get any more responses, etc., would be really cool.
Yeah, I will say we only spent not a few minutes. We were there for at least 20, I'd say, but we didn't spend a ton of time there because I was kind of worried that someone in the neighborhood was going to come out and yell at us.
That's fair.
But I think spending more time there and doing a more comprehensive investigation, definitely. I was thinking on the drive home that day of, like, we could have brought cat balls, we could have brought the spirit box, and so there's more to be done. Or even visiting it at night, which I do think would definitely attract attention from the neighborhood.
Yes.
But could be really cool just to see even if we drive by, to see if we hear any howling or anything. I think there's a lot of potential with this site.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode of Paranormal in Pennsylvania, where we discussed the Butler Black Cross. Tune in next Thursday to see what hauntings we discuss next. Stay spooky.